my pain threshold had to wait until I was contemplating suicide. And imagine if I'd have succeeded. But I was trying, you know? And so at that point, I remember I had enough in my pipe that if I would have smoked it, I could have blew my heart out, figuratively speaking, right? Nobody sets out and wants to be homeless. Nobody sets out and wants to have on dirty clothes and this, that, and the other. Like, this stigma, even around mental illness alone. Like, it's not just drugs or substances or addiction, period. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's the whole stigma around mental illness. Why? Because again, we're a society that's looking at behavior.
When did you finally, this is it, I'm done?
I ran away, broke the compulsion, but every time I came back home, like 2 or 3 days, the crave would kick in, something serious, and I would be so scared. I'm like, So I lived in Atlanta for about 7 years, because I was scared to live in my own country.
No, it's not the nightly news, and I am not back on Bermuda Broadcasting, but I am here to have an amazing chat with the lovely and multi-talented Rikeesha Binns, who we all know as a songstress extraordinaire, but she tells me she's not a songstress. She's actually a worshiper who knows how to sing. So we're going to hold her to that, hopefully, at the end of this. We'll see how it goes. It's touch and go for that right now. She is the consummate professional because it's blowing 90 knots out there, and she's here, not a hair out of place or anything. Rikeesha, thanks for sitting to chat with us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
It's amazing, and you know, of course, neither of us were prepared for this. We were told by Dr. James to come up here to have a chat. We didn't know it was going to be with each other. Let's get right into it. Tell us about Rikeesha Binns. Who is Rikeesha Binns? Where did you come from? What is your background?
Okay. My name is a bit of a trip. So I was raised by my dad's parents. So I'm an Anderson from St. George's. Whoop, whoop. And then, you know, my mom's mom is a Gibbons, right? So Anderson's, Gibbons, and then, of course, I'm a Binns, right? So that's how all that works. That's how all it merges together.
Typical
So
Bermudian.
if you know an Anderson or if you know a Gibbons, you kind of know, you'll see my little personality coming through.
Typical Bermudian mix, right?
Yeah.
You have an interesting backstory. You weren't always the individual that you are now, or none of us are, but your story is a lot more interesting. You had some difficulties as you came through from teenager, young adult, to the person that you are now. Recount some of that for us.
Okay, so I'm 17 years old, and I have 4 dependents. My nana, my papa, my mama, my daddy. Turn of events, at 18, I'm left with 1. So my mom died in a bike accident, August 95. My dad passed away 8 months later, April 1st, 96. My papa had a heart attack or a stroke or something the next day, died the following day. So we buried my daddy the Thursday before Easter, my papa the Tuesday after Easter. 2 weeks later, I returned to college, and then I was sexually assaulted. So back then, who knew what grief and loss was? Who knew what depression was?
Yes, you just moved on, you just got on with it.
Trauma was, you know, I mean, drinking, smoking marijuana in college. I thought, when I look back on it, I thought that I was just tired all the time, but I didn't realize that that symptom of being tired constantly, not having a will to get up. You know, initially I justified it to just say, well, I've been hanging out all night, so that's why I'm tired the next day. But in actuality, these are the types of symptoms that go with depression, grief and loss, trauma, all of those things. So if you don't know any better, you can't identify it. With that being said, I started drinking more, started using more.
Using?
Marijuana at the time, right? Smoking weed a lot more. And before I knew it, bye-bye to my scholarship. My nana can't afford it all on her own, right? So being that I'm not making class, now I've lost my scholarship. So I returned to Bermuda. Even at that point, still didn't realize what was all happening, not really addressing anything, you know, just trying to just survive, really. And then one thing led to another. Started using ecstasy, started singing in the bands and things like that. Before I knew it, ecstasy graduated to crack cocaine. And that was downhill from there.
When you say it was downhill from there, what was that descent like for you?
Quick, very quick. Some may take time to get there, but I mean, it was like in a matter of 2 years. So you go from this, sure, know your life's path, know what you're supposed to be doing, everything seems to be just smooth sailing. And then all of a sudden this freight train comes, knocks you off course. And it's like a deer in headlights, like, where do I go from here? Like, how do I deal with this? You know what I mean? So, I mean, I lost everything. And when I say everything, I'm not talking about like riches and, I mean, I lost
yourself.
Everything. I lost any sense of purpose or who I was, why I was here. I lost all of that. But I'm so grateful. Because guess what I was studying to be?
What were you studying to be?
An actuary. So imagine, this personality stuck behind a desk and a calculator for the rest of her life. You think that was how I was supposed to end up? Mm-mm.
But that downward spiral, you said it was quick. Within a matter of 2 years, you've gone from being Rikeesha Binns to somebody else. What did that person look like? Who was that person?
Scared, frustrated, lost. That's probably the best word, lost. Extremely lost. Like, I mean, growing up, I dealt with low self-esteem. I was bullied a lot, but I was still in the in crowd. So, and then on top of that, smart, nippy, fire. So I was able to hide from my friends the hurt. But when I would get home, I would be like, I'm so ugly, I'm so skinny, I'm not this and I'm not that. And my nana would say, but you're such a beautiful girl. And I'm like, whatever, you're supposed to tell me that, you're my nana. But I didn't believe it myself. So it doesn't matter what people say about you. Your story begins and ends with what you think about yourself.
Yeah. I should probably have asked you this at the outset. How did that loss impact you? Was it something that was tangible or you were unaware of it? Did you hide it? Did you acknowledge it?
I look at it and I believe I was in a fog. I think it just shut me in a place where, like, you're looking around and all of a sudden nothing looks familiar. So that's why I guess I could say I was lost. I mean, when you think about oh my gosh, me and my parents were tight. Even though they didn't raise me, there was no question I was daddy's little girl. My mama was just so down to earth, so wise. So she was strict in some areas to make sure that her daughter didn't end up like her. You know what I mean?
Right.
But so down to earth and open in other areas, so full acceptance, just thinking you could handle the world, and then they were taken from me.
No doubt there was a loss of guidance.
Yeah. I mean, I can't really say no loss of guidance because my nana has been my rock through it all. So if you go in all these different directions, right? My nana was like that solid place. The Andersons and their love was like that thing that you could come back to, right? I often see people going through recovery and I can't imagine what it would have been like to have done it on your own. I never had to do this walk on my own. I walked away so that I wouldn't hurt them. You know what I mean? But for somebody who wants that connection and you have no one to connect to, how do you fill that void? So in that regard, I would say I always had the connection. It was always there. In fact, that was the thing that had the power to reel me back in.
Before you were reeled back in, what was life like for you? What would the average day look like for you? We hear of people who find themselves in that circumstance. Their main objective is to satisfy their craving.
That's it. So the phenomenon of crave, like people will always look at you like, well, you made the choice to start drinking, or you made the choice to start using, or whatever. Why you just can't stop? Why you just can't this? Let me tell you, don't nobody want to be out there selling themselves for no rock. Don't nobody want to be out there not getting a bath, not eating, not this, not that. It's got to be something else at work here, right? So, yeah, people might make the choice to go and try it. But guess what you didn't choose? How you react to it. So somebody might say, well, I made the choice to go eat a shrimp. But you didn't make the choice for your neck to swell up and need an EpiPen before you suffocate, right? Or I made a choice to go and eat a strawberry, but you didn't make the choice to break out in hives. I made a choice to eat a plate of spaghetti, but you didn't have a choice about getting acid reflux. Not everybody that eats a chocolate cake gets diabetes. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So you asked me about a day, hell on high heels with a leather jacket. How about that? So from the time you wake up to the time, and I can't really say go to bed because it's days at a time doing the same thing over and over and over. What I'm going to do for my next fix? Initially, when you got the money, everything's good.
Yeah, everything's all right.
But what about when the money runs out?
Yes.
Right? So when I talk about prostitution, all of that, you would do whatever. And then, people say, oh, wow, I would never this and I would never that. And I just used to look at the people around me, and I would be like, yet. That was my thing. I would study other people's behaviors, even while I was getting high. Let's say, I remember saying, oh, I would never sell myself for anything less than $3,000. Please, the $2 crack code is a real thing. Right? But I couldn't even fathom the thought. But I kept seeing the money diminishing, getting lower and lower and lower. And then, even partying with somebody, and I gave her, all of these rocks. And she was like, all of this is for me? And I was like, well, how much do you usually get? I'm asking her these questions. You know what I mean? And she's like, yeah, well, people just usually give me clippings or this and that. And I was like, I would never do that. Yet. So that crave is so powerful. It's like when you're in that compulsion, nothing can break it. Nothing can break it. And the discomfort lives, right? So it's like I need to do whatever I can because that fix is the only thing that can set me free. That's the only way I can break from all this nonsense that's going on around me. You can imagine being in a crack house. The amount of dangerous situations that you put yourself in on a regular basis. You think I really want to be there? You think anybody else really wants to be there? Anyone in society, when you see these people on the street. I remember when I used to walk past people and ask them for $1 or something like that. And I know how they looked at me, how they turned their nose up at me.
Judgmental.
Now I'm singing in the church. And these same individuals going to come up and shake my hand and hug on me, and I'm not speaking ill against anyone particularly in the, you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying that in our culture, until it hits home, it's not my problem. You feel what I'm saying?
Yes.
So when I see people on the street or whatever, and they're asking me for $1 or whatever, no, mind you, I'm trying to save, so I don't keep cash. Right? Because cash in my hand is burnt, it's spent, right? But I will say, listen, I ain't got no change on me, but if you want me to go inside and get you something, I'll do that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Or even old cats that I used to smoke with, you know? I remember one time though, yes, going up Store Hill, this gentleman was coming down, and he spoke to me, and for a split second there, I got a little high and mighty. Halfway up the hill, I caught myself. I was like, seriously, Rikeesha? This is where you come to? You better catch yourself, baby girl. You know what I mean? That was the first and last time. So if I have it, you can have it too. You know? It's that kind of thing. Nobody sets out and wants to be homeless. Nobody sets out and wants to have on dirty clothes and this, that, and the other. The stigma, even around mental illness alone. It's not just drugs or substances or addiction, period. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's the whole stigma around mental illness. Why? Because again, we're a society that's looking at behavior, not at disease. That's what's going to cut the fat from
But
meat.
let's come back to what you said originally. You said, anyone can see you made the choice, and it comes right back to that, because you're saying it was a sickness, it's a mental health issue, but people can argue, well, you chose to do that. We didn't send you to do that.
Uh-huh. And that's why I tell them, yeah, I did choose to do it, but I didn't choose the reaction. See? And that's just it. I didn't choose the reaction.
Yes.
If someone maybe would have told me the signs that I could have looked out for, you know what I mean? Like, for each generation, it comes down the line. So let me digress for a bit. I would argue to say, to answer that question, I would argue to say, do you know how a doctor classifies a disease? Most people would say, like if I ask you, do you think addiction is a disease or a choice? No, because of education, you would get majority people recognizing that it was actually a disease.
A disease, yes.
But if I ask you, how is it a disease, you don't know how to tell me. I can tell you, and I would say this. A doctor or a medical professional will say a disease is classified, you have an organ, it malfunctions, and it produces symptoms. So let's look at alcohol, okay? Alcohol, you got two organs that are jacked up. So the obvious organ is the kidney or the liver?
Liver.
The liver, okay. So you have the liver, it malfunctions, it produces symptoms. What's the malfunction? The malfunction in your liver is that it's supposed to produce an enzyme that breaks down the alcohol called acetaldehyde. I'll call it ACE for short.
Are you
Right?
you sound more like a professional?
Well, because
medical
this is
professional.
my disease,
Yes.
so I studied it to the
Yes,
nine,
yes.
so that I know how to beat it. So I did my own research, right? So my liver doesn't produce this enzyme called ACE, which breaks down the liquor. That's why I had tolerance. So when I go out with my friends, I can drink 7, 8, 9, 10 shots, whereas somebody whose liver's working just fine, they get a little tipsy off of 1, 2, or 3. See, so in a culture, we would say, oh, that person can handle their liquor. But I would challenge it to say, we ain't handling jack, because we can't break it down. That's why a person can not drink for 4 days and you smell it coming through their pores. You smell like liquor, but I ain't even had a drink. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, you have that organ. Now, if it's in the brain, you have a brain, it malfunctions, it produces symptoms, right? So with that liver malfunction, what was the symptom? Tolerance, loss of control, using despite adverse consequences. That's what separates me from the other person who can drink. See, that was the reaction I didn't expect was coming. The fact that eventually I will lose control. My first telltale sign was that I had tolerance. That's built in genetically. Came down the line, right? So if a person wants to avoid cancer, or if a person wants to avoid diabetes, right? When you go to your doctor, have you heard him ask you, do you have high blood pressure that runs in your family? Do you have anyone that has cancer that runs in your family? Have you ever heard someone say, do you have alcoholics in your family, or anyone ever deal with addiction? Have you ever dealt with addiction? When have you ever heard your doctor ask you that?
Precisely, never.
Exactly, right? So imagine if I was a doctor and I had a patient and I asked you if it runs in your family, that may determine what medications I prescribe. Right? Or that might say, like when I'm speaking to young people and I'm saying, yo, when you're hanging out with your friends and you could drink way more than your friends can, for me, my friends always relied on me to get them home. Or if we were out and somebody had to drive us home, it was always going to be me. No, I'm not saying that I weren't intoxicated, just maybe not to the extent that they were. Why? Because I had that first telltale sign of tolerance. That's the first symptom. Eventually, over time, loss of control. How do I explain that to a teenager? Hey, ball, if you say you're only going happy hour, you're only going to stay for happy hour, but you find yourself closing out ambassadors every time you go drink, that's loss of control. You're going against your own word. Or you're only going to drink on the weekends, but you find yourself breaking your word and drinking on the Tuesday or the Wednesday or the whatever, right? That's the next symptom, loss of control.
When did you realize you'd lost control?
The first time I saw myself, I remember that moment. I remember getting into the shower, scraping my skin, scrubbing, trying to get the smell, his scent. I could still feel him on me, you know? Like I remember that moment. Clear as day. All before then, it seemed fun. I didn't even notice the steady decline until that moment. And that's the whole kicker, is that, like I often tell people when they come in to see me, everyone has a different pain threshold. So when you get to that last symptom, which is using despite adverse consequences, that's the stamp of approval that something is seriously wrong. Because that loss of control bit is a bit dicey. You know why? Because oftentimes we compare out. We compare what we're not as opposed to what we are. So for me, I would say I'm not an alcoholic or I'm not an addict or anything like that because I don't do it every day. Oh, I don't drink every day. When I go home, I don't always get a glass of scotch or something like that. Or I've never blacked out. Or I'm not, out in the street or like this. I was comparing what I wasn't doing, but not looking at what I did do. So what I'm getting at is I found out I'm a binger. I'm that type. So what does that mean? That means that once I start, I don't stop.
Yes.
Until I'm passed out. That can take 2 weeks. As long as my dealer can come on time,
You're all right.
I'm going to be awake for the next hit. But if he takes a little too long and I fall asleep, then that bout is finished. You know what I mean? And it could last maybe a week, 2 weeks, months, right? So I can also go long periods without using, right? So when you talk about, oh, I'm not an addict because I don't do it like that person, my thing would be, do you lose control? And again, you're talking about a person's pain threshold. Your pain threshold or your tolerance is different from mine.
Yes.
So one person may lose their job, which was their everything. Another person may lose their job and their family and get off the elevator, right? Guess what? At the end, the result is the same because it's progressive, it's chronic, it never goes away. Hello, hi. That's another story for another day. And then it's also fatal. So, depending on a person's pain threshold will depend on when they decide to get off the elevator.
Let's talk about that. When did you decide to get off the elevator? Because you say that you have a person has to hit rock bottom,
right.
rock bottom before they.
And that's a farce. I would challenge that thought to say we don't hit rock bottom, we live there. Okay, so it's no such thing as what your rock bottom looks like. There's 3 end results: jails, institutions, or death. Those that actually hit death in there couldn't get off the elevator because they obviously have a serious pain threshold. You understand? Mine was
Is it a pain threshold, or are they trying to deal with that pain?
When I say pain threshold, it's that consequence bit.
Yes.
Right? So your set of consequences look different from the set of consequences I'm built to handle.
Right.
So when I talk about a pain threshold, I'm talking about a person's consequences. Oftentimes I would tell people, if you keep cushioning the blow, right? These are the enablers.
Yes.
So for example, let's say I have a son and he's strung out. I would rather him do his stuff at home where I can keep him safe than have him out on the street. So therefore, I have an apartment downstairs. Why don't you go stay in the apartment? I'll give you a gas card and I'll give you a food card. That person has a roof over their head, they have food in their mouth, they have clothes on their back, and they have no need to have to break their compulsion. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So if I'm cushioning their blow, but what if they did end up having to be homeless because mom kicked them out the house, right? So if mom decides to set her boundaries and say, I'm only willing to do this, 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 like I would say to people, give them our brochure for Pathways Bermuda. Give them an out. You set your boundaries of how much you're willing to invest in that person emotionally, physically, or financially even, right? So let's say you have the means. You could send that child away right now, right? Listen, as long as you're living in this house,
These are the boundaries. These are the rules.
boundaries that I set. Now, if you don't adhere to these boundaries, I've got to let you go. You know, no, most people will leave and find somewhere else to stay. I stayed in crack houses, just bounced between the other. My pain threshold had to wait until I was contemplating suicide. And imagine if I'd have succeeded. But I was trying, you know? And so at that point, I remember I had enough in my pipe that if I would have smoked it, I could have blew my heart out, figuratively speaking, right? And every time I was trying to bring the pipe to my mouth, you know, call it what you want, there was something, you know what that was? There was something in the room with me that day. And every time I was trying to bring the pipe, and no, I hadn't had a smoke. So it wasn't like I'm having paranoia and I'm off my head. I made sure that I took that break so that when I did this specifically, because that first hit is always the most impactful, that I was going to be successful in what I was doing, okay? So let me just make that
Which was
clear.
to commit suicide.
Yes, right? So I'm pulling the pipe to my face and something is in the room doing like this. And I'm looking behind me and there's nothing there. But I literally feel something in the room pushing my hand down like this. And I'm fighting whatever it is that I can't see. I'm fighting it like that. And then I was so distraught. I was like, I can't even kill myself right. And I took my pipe and I slammed it against the wall and I watched it shatter in a whole bunch of pieces and I just started crying. And at that moment I was just like, God, I can't do this. I can't live like this anymore. I can't go forward. I can't go back. I can't stop. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Like, I can't take it. And I can't even kill myself, right? I need a way out. And 2 minutes later, no one could find me for weeks. 2 minutes later, there was a knock on the door, where my aunt and my uncle were up and down Court Street looking for me. And they said, we found a place for you to go to treatment. You can go right now. And there you have it.
The hand of God.
The hand of God.
Pushing away that crack.
And I knew it was either God himself or angel or whatever you want to call it. I don't care. People could say I'm losing my mind. But there are certain moments in my life that are without question. You can tell me I'm Maui Bond all you like. But there are certain moments, so unfortunately you can't bark up this tree and tell me God don't exist. Because it's just too much evidence.
What caused the turnaround? You said that your aunt and uncle came to the crack house, got you out of there, made the offer to take you into treatment, but it's still, you have to make that decision.
I was finished. You know what I mean? Like I said, that space of hopelessness. You know, I mean, I'm literally there trying to take my life. Literally. Too coward to jump off a building. Too coward to slit my wrist. So I don't want to see all that. But I could probably blow up my heart. At least that way, the way that I'll go would be fun. Or scary. Something.
Would be an experience either way.
Either way, at least I ain't got to worry about, you know, if I jump off a building and it doesn't kill me, then I'm just like deformed for the rest of my life. So that's what scared me with that. If I slit my wrist and it doesn't work and I end up having scars for the rest of my life, I didn't want that either. You know what I mean? But at least with crack, if it doesn't work, I could try again. When you said it was my choice to use.
Yes.
Okay? So let's look at choice. When you have a choice, that means that you have free will. That means I can do it if I choose to or not, right? When you have compulsion,
that free will is taken away.
That you don't have a choice anymore. No, recovery gives you your choice back. So I'm in a position of choice right now because I work my recovery, right? I do have a choice in whether or not I decide to go down to my dealer's house because my dealer is within walking distance of my house, right? So when I'm in my car, what makes me go left and go home every night rather than turn right and go down to my dealer's house?
What makes you turn left and not right?
Recovery. Because for me, my recovery and my relationship with Christ is so intertwined. It's so wrapped in. There's no separation of the two, right? They walk in conjunction with each other. There's my relationship with Christ. Hey, those who love me keep my commandments, right? So I love what he's done in my life. So guess what? Don't do the dumbness if you want to, Rikeesha. Take your little happy butt home, right? And then there's my recovery, which gives you tools, which gives you support, which gives you a plan. For example, if I text my best friend and say, hey, your couch ready? She knows what that means. Why? Because I have promised that I will spend 24 hours on her couch before I drive that way, right? You feel me?
Yes.
And in that, she knows who she's supposed to call. She has names of people to call, okay? And Maya, she was like, are you really going to fight me? Because, I'm scared, are you? Like, are you really going to fight me? But all in all, she has a plan mapped out for me. Because there is a thing. If you're watching and, you're struggling with this, right? Here is the thing. Do whatever it takes to just not pick up in the moment. That's it. You know what I mean? So let's say I wake up in the middle of the night and I've had a crack dream. When I wake up, my body and my mind is going through the motions like I just had a hit. See, nobody asks us about those type of questions. Oh, you should be delivered. You should be this. You should be that. I am. And I honor that with the work that I put in. Faith without works is dead. I have the faith that God has healed me, but I will continue to do the work to keep that faith growing. You feel me? So in that regard, we tell people all the time, keep it simple. Just don't pick up. Do whatever it takes to just not pick up.
How hard is that?
Sometimes it's very hard. So let's say you're not going to eat a chocolate. How hard is it for you to go past every single donut bar and not walk out the store with a chocolate?
Extremely difficult for me.
How hard is it for a person to make a New Year's resolution and by February,
It's
April,
over and
whatever?
done with.
You feel me? So people can get all judgmental. Let me tell you these statistics. Only 2 out of 20 make it.
Wow.
85% will relapse within the first year. No, I don't separate the two. I read in the Word that the word is narrow, not wide. But I heard my counselor saying only 2 out of 20 make it. So I'm sitting there saying, well, what are the 2 doing that the other 18 are not? Right? So when people, try to get all high and mighty with that stuff, I'm like, the same reason. Listen, with intention, it's always followed by disruption. Disruption always follows intention. Someone makes, it's January 1st, and I'm going to start working out, right? So you get your gym membership, you got your diet in order, everything's ready to go, everything's going smooth. Then all of a sudden, your car breaks down, so you can't get to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning, right? So you end up catching the bus. You say you're going to end up going on your lunch break, but then your boss calls a meeting. Every day it seems like just
Some sort of stumbling block is being put in your path.
Right? And so if you can make it on the other side of disruption, now you're hit and maintain. But disruption always follows intention. So we have the intention to want to quit. I want to go away to treatment. How about the government worker that can't even afford to go away to treatment because their insurance doesn't cover the bill? I could send a gas station attendant away to treatment for $1,200 a day, but I can't send a government worker or a person who has a certain type of insurance. So we don't have what they need to do here on island. They're paying insurance, but yet I can't send you away. Then I'm not pointing blame at anyone. I'm just saying that disruption follows intention. And let me tell you, here's the bottom line though. Hear this loud and clear. You could go to the best facility in the world. If you're not ready, you're just not ready.
And that brings me back to what I was asking you before. When did you realize that you were ready and such?
I don't know. It was like I realized I was ready. I set up to be ready. But guess what? I showed up to my counseling sessions high as a kite for like maybe 6 months after that. You understand what I'm saying? So
despite the opportunity that you got with this entity who we would refer to as God, or an angel, an angelic force, pushing that crack pipe away from your lips, your relatives coming and rescuing you, because that is what it was, rescuing you from that environment, you were still getting high.
Yeah. And then I finally got off to treatment because there was a period between the yes and actually finally being able to go. That's what I'm talking about. So somebody can say, oh, yes, I want to get off the streets. And then they go to an entity and try to get in. And there's a 21 waiting period. You know? So what if the person overdoses within 21 days?
Within that interim period.
You feel me? You can roll up in pathways and see somebody today. But we're outpatient. We're not inpatient. So then there is a process that has to take place. Now, mind you, I'm not really like bucking against the system, right? Because some of us say yes, but then something pulls us right back out on the street. You know what I mean?
Yes.
There is no perfect way, but it's just that we still have to do more and do it better. That's all I'm getting at, right? There's no perfect solution. But there are many solutions that we can do in the meantime.
But each individual is different, and
yes.
each individual circumstance is different.
At the end of the day, it's always going to be up to the individual.
Yes.
Like I often tell people, listen, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 10 steps forward, 20 steps back. 3 steps forward, 1 step back. 5 steps forward, 3 steps back. But
was that in fact your experience?
Yes. We don't look at relapse as failures. See, most people will say, oh, well, they relapsed, they picked up again, this is useless, da-da-da-da-da. No, we don't look at relapse as failures. Relapses are learning opportunities. You learn what worked for you, what wasn't working for you. Where were you shucking and jiving? Hello, hi, somebody. You know what I mean? With every relapse that I've had, like I said, I didn't realize that I was binge user, which I can have long periods of sobriety and all of a sudden just slip up and fall off the handle. You know why? When I feel like everything is fine and dandy, I get to a point where it's like, God, go just try it once. You can handle it no more. You know what I mean? Like, that's a reality too. And sometimes it tricks us. But then again, a relapse is not a failure. My hope is that the person doesn't get so frustrated that they stay there. Keep coming back. Keep coming back. Stay at it. Sooner or later, a light bulb is going to go off. Sooner or later, you are going to be able to kick it.
So what is it that stopped you, or when did you get to that state, that position, that point where you stopped going to your counseling still using? When did you finally, this is it, I'm done?
I went away, broke the compulsion, but every time I came back home, like 2 or 3 days, the crave would kick in, something serious, and I would be so scared. I'm like, So I lived in Atlanta for about 7 years because I was scared to live in my own country. And then I was just like, you know, I need to learn how to live in my own country.
Yes.
Plus, I wrote a business plan for a treatment facility. It took spiritual principles. So I went to a spiritual program, inpatient program, and then I ended up at a government program, all in the U.S., right? And so I found like there were holes in each. Again, there's no perfect program. But I managed to do my research and merge different pieces from both. And I came up with this CCI, Christ-Centered Institute, that's what it's called. So I came up with this business plan. at that point, it was like I knew that my business plan was from my country. Right? So eventually I was going to have to learn how to live her.
Yes.
And I came in, and what happened? I relapsed within a year.
Oh, wow.
But then I ended up at Pathways Bermuda. I work there now, but I went there first as a client.
As a client, yes.
And at the time, it was Caron Bermuda. And they worked it out with scholarships and the like for me to be able to go overseas for treatment. So I look at my first treatment attempt as it gave me my foundation. It gave me my relationship with Christ. It gave me my relationship with myself. Now knowing Christ, I know who I am, and now I know what I'm born for. But when I went to Caron, that's the faith piece. When I went to Caron, it gave me my work. It taught me about the disease. It taught me about how to fight it. And all I did was take that information and build upon it. And I'm still building upon it 13 years later. I'll be celebrating 14 years this year.
Congrats.
You know what I mean? Thanks. But the kicker is that it's chronic. I'm not walking around here on eggshells like I'm a relapse tomorrow. But I'm also not over her old big build saying like it can't catch me. As long as I maintain my relationship with Christ, as long as I...
That seems to be the foundation on which your recovery, for want of a better term, is based. Tell us about that.
I usually tell people, if you don't pick a spiritual path, I'm not saying you're going to fail, but you have a higher chance. You know, just like when you go to your doctor and they say, well, if you don't fix your diet and if you don't do this, you have a higher chance of developing diabetes if that's what runs in your family. You feel me? There are certain things that will set you free. Now, I'm going to state it right for the record, clear as day. Jesus is my only higher power, right? Why? Because of the relationship that I developed with him. I grew up in the church.
So you train up a child in the way they should go.
Hello, hi, and like I said, those were the things that managed to reel me back in. You feel me?
Yes.
Ironic enough, I gave my heart to Christ when I was 8. I also started drinking when I was 8.
Oh, wow.
I was stealing nips from behind my papa's bar. I thought it was Malibu water. You know what I mean? But it weren't. I mean, I thought it was like, coconut water. I thought it was coconut water. It was a Malibu. And I wailed it. And so it became my super juice for a person who was bullied. Like, I would go outside and I'll be like, I wish you would. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So look at the irony in that. But I can look back on my life through everything that I've experienced, through my parents' loss, through my trauma. Like, honestly, I even look at, I was in such a fog losing my parents that even though the rape impacted me, I don't think it impacted me to a certain extent because I was already out there.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have to just deal with just a sexual assault. I was, like, I remember those moments, and there were bits and pieces that I can't remember because I was already out to lunch. Elvis had already left the building. You know? But in recovery, through counseling, everything was brought out into the middle of the floor for me to address it. And it was like I had to feel the impact of everything all over again, like it was fresh. I mean, there was a time I couldn't even say the word rape. Then there was a time I couldn't even say it without crying. Now, I can say it. Why?
Where does that strength come from?
My recovery. First, my foundation in Christ. Why? Because he accepts me right where I am. Doesn't matter what it looks like. You know? And I often tell people, if you can't handle that, Rikeesha, you don't deserve to have this one. Because guess what? She shows up every now and then. Right? It's just my recovery allows me to catch it. Relapse is a process. You don't just wake up one day and just go and relapse, you know. Once you've got your choice back. It's a process. There's a breakdown that happens over time, right? And so when that breakdown starts to happen, like I maintain my relationship with Boy. Like, that's my ace, you know? Like, whatever I need him for. Hey, if I need a daddy today, then that's what he is. But whatever, it doesn't matter what it looks like. Like, I know him, he knows me, and I'm empowered by him. the work, the studying, all of that, like I said, I have the foundation. Okay, I'll give you an example. I will read in the word, right? Okay, look. Something will say, no temptation have fallen man where God doesn't give a way of escape. No temptation have fallen man where God doesn't give a way of escape. What does that mean? Every temptation under the sun, somebody's had to deal with it. But here's the kicker, is that God will give you a way of escape. So I wake up in the morning, let's use the analogy of I woke up and I had a cracked dream and now my body's going through motions, right?
Right.
So I wake up and I'm tripping. Oh my gosh, did I have a smoke? Because the dream is so vivid, right? And I realized it was a dream, but now I'm fiending. So I say, I'm gonna go down to my dealer's house. But I go to call him. I thought I plugged my phone in, but I didn't because the plug came out of the wall.
Phone is dead.
My phone's dead. So I'm gonna plug it in to wait for it to charge. Way of escape number one. Then I say, okay, cool, I'll just walk down his house. You know what I mean? But I go outside and there's a hurricane watch. Just, out of the blue. Or, better yet, I get down his house and he's not there. Let's use that analogy. So I walked onto his house and he's not there. So I come back home. Now my phone's charged. And I call and say, hey, where you at? He's like, oh, I'm doing a pickup in town. So then I say, okay, cool. I'll meet you in town. I get out to my car. My light was on all night, so now the car wouldn't start. But no temptation have fallen man where God don't give you a way of escape. My car wouldn't start. So then I say, okay, fine, I'll catch the bus. I go catch the bus, and till's dawn, everybody's on strike. Oh my God. You see what I'm saying? So, at any moment's notice, you can catch yourself during all those ways of escape. So, my relationship with God keeps my discipline. My discipline is not just about the drugs. It's like another one, be sober, be vigilant. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Now, I'm not one of those that can tell you where to go find it, you know what I mean?
But
I
you know
what
it. Yes.
When I read it,
yes.
How I remembered it, right? So I'm saying be sober, be vigilant. At first I thought it was don't drink, don't drug. Because you're here in recovery, that's your primary condition. Everything else is what were you medicating in the first place? That trauma, that sexual assault, that lack of connection, that abandonment, that rejection, whatever it is, right? That's what I was initially medicating. But now you've removed the drugs out of the picture, now the real issues kick in. Being sober and being vigilant has nothing to do with being intoxicated. It's your state of mind. So if I'm stressed, anxious, worried, hungry, lonely, tired, any of those things, I'm not sober, I'm not vigilant. And like, y'all boys around here doing push-ups, waiting for me to be weak so that he could wiggle his way in. Something as simple as last one. This was like real powerful right here. I remember reading something, don't let the enemy get a foothold. And I read that for the longest while. I know what it means. I'm not a dummy, right? But it didn't sink in until I was in the kitchen and my friend was making breakfast. And he went to go close the door after grabbing the eggs out, and I put my foot there. And I blocked the door from closing for the fridge, right? And I opened up the door to get some orange juice. If you get a foothold, you can wiggle your whole way in. Block every single thing that can make you fall at the end of the day. We all know what it is. When we all make that decision to make a change, again, disruption follows intention. But guess what? There's always a way of escape if you want to go back.
It's all linked.
Everything is linked. Everything is tied together. Everything is connection. What is addiction or substance abuse? It's disconnect. It disconnects you from your spiritual space. It disconnects you from your human experience, who you truly are, and therefore it disconnects you from everybody that you love.
Which of those two is the more important?
I would have to say my father first. He made me. So if you made me, nobody else has any right to say who I'm supposed to be.
Including
And now-
you.
Exactly. Because guess what? I could have it all wrong when I tell you I didn't think I was beautiful. You know what I mean? Tell me to, I'm blue in the face, but you're so beautiful. And I'm like, y'all, whatever. Until I believed it myself. And I mean, and I'm not just talking about just being pretty to watch. You know what I mean?
Yes.
My beauty comes from way in her. Like, you didn't give it to me, you can't take it away. And I'm sorry if that seems boasty. But like my father has
Tell your
said-
story, Lee. You tell your story.
You know what I mean? My father has told me who I am. And he also told me he doesn't waste a heart. And every single thing that he gave space for me to experience, he's now showing me what I could do with it. So I didn't just survive what I've been through, I'm thriving it now, you know? And I'm not even taking none of the credit for that, except the fact that I did the work. One foot in front of the other. Do the work, leave the results up to God. So, he's the one who's the author of the result. I'm just gotta do the work. My recovery gives me a roadmap of how to do the work. That Bible, that thing that I read, that like empowers me, I'm sorry too. People can say what they like. Oh, the Bible's by a white man, and the Bible's this, and the Bible's that. I challenge you, go and read that Bible for yourself. Stay open, stay willing, and tell me if you could stay the same.
That change is inevitable.
You cannot read that thing and not have something happen. You know, like I tell people all the while, I'm not concerned with religion. I'm not concerned with the rituals and this and that and all of that. No, what I'm concerned with is the relationship. If you go into a church or a gathering or anywhere and you're trying to keep up, you can't. You're going to fail every time.
Has to be at your pace. You have to develop your own
You
personal
develop
relationship.
your own relationship. Everybody's looks different. Everybody's looks different. You can't take mine from me because I worked it.
Your walk is your walk.
It's mine. It's not like yours. It's not like yours. It's not like yours. It's mine. Yours is going to be yours. And can't no one tell you how to get there. But if you take the suggestions and you just put one foot in front of the other, blow your mind.
So again, it all comes back down to this relationship with this higher being.
I'm going to say God. I'm
I
going to
was-
say Jesus. I'm going to throw it out. Call it what you like. But, yeah, because he is your designer. So how do you know? Here we go. If you don't understand the nature of a thing, why it was made, abuse is inevitable. I got that from my bishop, right? And it's stuck. You create a car. A car could be successful. You could turn it into storage. You could pack it to the hill with all your clothes so that you can have room in your house. It's doing something good, but it ain't doing what it was born for. It was made to drive you from point A to point B. That car is not successful until it's driving you around. We can do a lot of good things, but until we do that thing that we were
For which
created
we were
for,
created.
you ain't successful. So what does success look like to you? Find out who your creator is, find out why he created you, and then do that.
We're not saying anything else. That's the end of this interview.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Rikeesha. God bless.
Yes.
Despite the efforts and the success that Rikeesha has had in recovering, and she continues to be in recovery as she described it, there is always that threat of relapse. There is always, as she described it, that strong man doing push-ups, just waiting to overpower her. Where does the real solution lie? How do we find that solution? How do we arrive at that point of success, if at all?